This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about all the big changes coming to Game Pass, Valve getting sued in the UK, Bloodborne coming to PC, sort of, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 40. I am your host, the man who would probably use the rewind feature in real life if he could, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me as always, the man who gets a 30% cut of all revenue earned for this podcast, Justin, better known as I am Zeracon. 30% of zero is zero. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It not bad. Had a nice quiet 4th of July weekend as we mentioned last week. I had Friday off, so had Friday through Sunday off, and I think I mentioned this, and at least in the last video, I know we talked about this afterwards, but Tuesday, as when this video goes up, my sister got married.
Yay.
So that was definitely great. She only got legally married. She's going to have the full ceremony later on this year, but she went ahead, got married and stuff. So that was good. Nice. It was nice. It was quick, and also we took it at a courthouse in one of the historic areas. So for taking pictures afterwards, there were a lot of great places to take pictures and stuff like that. Only downside was just that it was just so hot. That was the only thing, and just like wearing a full suit and stuff was just ugh. But yeah, other than that though, week's been pretty quiet. I'll say pretty calm.
That's good. Yeah, I remember when my younger sister got married, and that was 2019. And of course, at that point, we'd still been living in Alaska. We were not used to humidity at all. So we went over to Massachusetts, and it was just like hot and extremely humid. And we were just like not used to humidity at all. So we were just drenched in sweat most of the time. And initially, the plan was to have the wedding outside, but thankfully, by the grace of God, they moved it inside, and it was so we had actual air conditioning and everything, which helped a lot. But man, it's just like we were struggling because of how hot and humid it was for us poor Alaskans that just were not used to it at all. So yeah. As for my week, been pretty busy. I realized that between Wednesday and Saturday, I basically didn't play any games. It was like, I think basically end of the day Saturday was when I finally had some time to play some games. And it's just because, of course there was editing the podcast, working on editing videos, getting stuff prepped for the 4th of July get-together, which was mostly just a small amount of cooking, but then I also had other stuff I was working on, editing the podcast, and then getting together with family, and then getting stuff prepped for Sunday because we did music on Sunday, and so there was all of that prep, and it was just a lot of work that had to be done over that weekend, and thankfully I was eventually able to get some gaming in, but it was very busy, and this week is looking like it's going to be pretty similar. I haven't even really had a chance to do much of anything yet with editing the next comparison. But the way it's looking right now, it's probably going to be just like it was last week, and probably just for the entire month of July, where I'm going to have to make Saturday my work day and Sunday my rest day instead, because especially this comparison that's coming up, which is the Diablo 3 one, it's like an hour and 20 minutes or so long, and so there's a lot of editing that goes into it. I don't think it will be quite as bad as it was with Shin Megami Tensei 5, because that one, there was a lot more direct comparisons in different spots because of all the cutscenes and stuff. This one, I think, will have less of that. But, and then, I mean, there's a lot of, the dungeons are randomized because, they're procedurally generated and stuff, so that aspect will make it so I don't have to pause the footage as much and all that. But anyway, yeah, I think that's pretty much been my week. I feel like there's something else. Oh, I did get to record another Dads in Gaming interview yesterday, so
Nice.
that means I have 2 more that are ready to go, more or less. I mean, other than the fact that they have to be edited, but the editing is pretty easy for the most part. So, I have like 2 other ones that are at least lined up. They're just not. We haven't scheduled the day when we would actually record and everything, but the next one probably won't be out until next Friday, and then the one that I just recorded yesterday will be 2 weeks after that. So end of July or beginning of August, whichever it is.
Okay, nice, very good. And I also enjoyed the one you put out before. That was very good.
Yeah, that was a fun interview. Lem's a very interesting guy. Harold. Yeah, it was good stuff. So, what have you been playing this past week?
Alright, so I played some Toy Story 2 as part of my 4th of July tradition. So I was playing that for a while. I mean, initially I had played it just for video footage, but also I did actually play some on the actual 4th. Played that for a good while. I normally play about 5 levels of the game, just because pretty much those were the only levels I could actually beat when I was a kid. I mean, I did actually go a little bit further this year and just play like a little bit more. So I played probably about 6 or 7 levels instead of my usual 5. But it's still a decent game just to enjoy, and it's definitely something that I, as I mentioned before, just really hold near and dear, just because it's one of the first games that I actually played, or actually owned, I should say. But also the fact that, it's a game that I always played around a very specific time of the year, and like I did that almost perpetually. And also I just really love Toy Story, so that's also another reason why I also enjoyed it as well. But yeah, that's what I did there. I went back and I played some more Metroid Prime Remastered, and it's a bit the Phazon mines I'm remembering now are a bit more chaotic than I remember, just because of the fact that it's quite a bit of a labyrinth, because there are multiple floors you go to in that one area. And not only that, but the save rooms are also more spread out, so you have to do more traversal before you can actually get to the next save points and whatnot, which also was a bit of a concern for me, because I eventually got to one area of the game where right before you get the oh gosh, what I can't remember, it's the power bomb, and there's like this drone that you can't lock onto, and I thought at first, am I doing something wrong? Because also I'm firing different beams at it. It keeps repelling the beams, and I'm just thinking to myself, oh no, I'm not doing well at all, and this thing's just firing at me consistently, and I'm almost dead. But for some reason, I guess, I don't even know what I was doing right, but somehow I was stunning it with the wave beam, and eventually took it down. I was happy about that, because it turns out the save room was right in the next room, so I went ahead and saved there and whatnot. But after doing that, I went a little further on, and I reached the point where I have to actually go backtrack now and get the X-ray vision, so that way I can get or at least see some grapple points that are invisible right now, because I know that I can get across a certain area, but I just can't do it right now because I can't see what I'm doing. But yeah, that's what I've been doing with that right now. And I've been playing more Kingdom Hearts Final Mix HD. It's been a bit of a churn for some areas, just because Atlantica, for the most part, it's not a problem, but the Ursula boss fights, I thought the first one was bad enough. The second one, she was just such a nuisance. And I didn't even realize, and I think this is something that is part of the proud mode difficulty, because I was just looking up something online just to know what am I doing wrong right now because I kept dying. She's actually using a sort of final phase attack. In the normal difficulty, she uses that early on. So the fact that she's doing it like near the beginning of the boss fight is just insane. And it took me, it probably took me maybe a dozen times before I finally beat her. And I was so relieved when I finally won because I was not having a good time there.
Yeah.
After that, though, I went to Halloween Town. At first, things seemed to be going pretty well until I went to one area with a bunch of white knights, and they just kept two-shotting me. And I'm just wondering, why am I having difficulties with these guys? Like, I shouldn't be having problems, and the problem also was the fact that I kept dying, and so because of that, I had to keep backtracking, or at least having to do over everything I was doing because of the fact that I wanted to do the no continue run for the achievement. So I had to keep doing that, and it took me a long while, but eventually I got to that. And surprisingly, the Oogie Boogie fight wasn't that bad. In fact, I was really nervous with the second part of the fight where you actually face him as the giant tree, because I kept getting hit with the fire from the lanterns, and that was a really big problem for me. But eventually, I overcame that. Neverland, that was also pretty straightforward. That had a bit of problems here and there initially, but overall that wasn't a bad level. But right now, currently, I'm at Hollow Bastion, and I know I'm not going to like this already, just because of the fact that I don't have my Keyblade anymore, and also the fact that it's on Proud mode, so enemies are going to be able to virtually one-shot or two-shot me. The good news is the fact that I actually still have magic. I thought I lost that ability when I lost the Keyblade, but I do actually I can still use magic. So that's probably my only saving grace right now. And fortunately, Beast so far seems to be pretty good. I don't know how much damage he's able to take right now, but so far he seems somewhat reliable. So
Yeah.
We'll see what happens there, but that's where I'm at there so far.
Very nice. Yeah, I remember so little. I mean, like, I remember bits and pieces of the original Kingdom Hearts because it's been probably 22 years since I played all the way through it. I mean, like, I remember, I want to say it was probably 2013-ish, the last time I started playing through Kingdom Hearts 1 again. And, I mean, I didn't play super far into it. I think I got up to the point of fighting Cerberus, and that was about as far as I got. So I'm pretty sure it was fairly early in the game, but like I don't even remember. It's been so long. Either way, yeah, good stuff. So my list of games is much shorter this week. But of course, I played some more Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. Really just kind of a little bit here and there. The main issue, of course, was the fact that I really just didn't have as much time to game this week as I usually do. But, of course, you know, still enjoying it a lot. Played mostly on Steam Deck, a little bit on PC. Yeah, great game. I don't have footage of it, of course, but I did play, you know, more of the Lego games with my boys. Finished up the third Pirates movie for the Lego games, and I think I'm almost near the end of the third Harry Potter, I want to say it is. I can't remember which one it is, but anyway, we're pretty close to the end of that. And then played some Super Mario Party as well with the boys. Specifically went for Super Mario Party rather than Mario Party Superstars because I was like, okay, you know, it's been a long time since I played Super Mario Party. And I remember there being some things I liked better about it. But I decided, you know, okay, we'll go ahead and try it out. And then I was reminded about partway in why I like the other Mario Party better. It's just, there's so many little things that I just don't really like about the Super Mario Party game, and I have a feeling that the upcoming one is going to follow a lot of those annoyances. So I haven't really decided if I'm even going to give that one a chance. The main problem I have with Mario Party Superstars, though, is mostly just that I'm getting a little bored of doing the same, like, 4 boards, and I don't know if maybe as I go along, eventually I'll get more boards, but it just... Yeah, I'm just a little bored of doing the same boards over and over, because, like, there's 2 boards I really like, which are both from Mario Party 2, I believe. And then the other ones are just kind of mediocre. But, yeah, anyway. So... there's that. I did play some more Ghosts of Tsushima, specifically the Legends mode. I went ahead and I completed, on the lowest level anyway, the bronze level. I soloed all the missions for that. And of course, I'm still really enjoying what I played when I have time to play. It's definitely one where I'm going to have to just kind of slowly grind through it unless I can find some people to play with. My problem is that it's not like convenient for me to find people to play with, even if I did matchmaking, which, you know, I think I briefly tried it a couple times and just was not. It was going so slowly, and it didn't seem like it was actually adding anyone, so I gave up trying. But I know that at least the plus side is that once I get one character leveled up enough, well, any gear that I obtain for one character is usable on every character. So, even though my rank won't increase unless I actually do the missions with other characters, I can at least get more powerful gear that's usable on every single character. So whenever I get to the point that since I am intending to eventually get 100% of all the achievements and trophies, I should be able to go in with the other characters when I'm done getting this one up to rank 20 and rank them up faster, because of the fact that I'll be able to do the higher level missions because I'll have better gear by default going in with each of them. So that's pretty cool. There's one mission I did, and that was probably the most annoying mission of the game. Well, one of the 2 most annoying missions. And it probably wouldn't be so bad with, you know, multiple people, but with just one person, it was a lot more tricky. You have these invisible enemies that they only, like, they're basically just, you know, ghosts, and they only show up when lightning strikes. And otherwise, like, the only way you can see them at all is with... I mean, you can see their shadows on the ground, but that's about the extent of it. One of the levels, there's like lamps you can strike that will reveal their locations a little bit, but even still, like, you can't use your special hearing or whatever to be able to sense them at all. Like, it doesn't work for that. So there's a couple spots where you just really get ganged up by them, and it just ends up being kind of annoying. But even still, like, I really find that this mode is brilliant, and I wish it was easier to find the time and everything to play with other people. You know, people who find people who actually want to play it and everything, because it is just really good, and I could see this being a lot of fun to do as a multiplayer kind of thing. But yeah, it's really cool. It'll probably be just something I hop into occasionally and just grind out some missions for the sake of getting better gear and stuff. Nice thing is that some of the gear has like different roles for perks, and you can re-roll the perks a little bit if you want, which is pretty nifty. But even without that, there's still some cool effects. Like you can get some of the ghost weapons that when an enemy is hit by them, they catch fire. So like there's like with the smoke bomb, well, no, maybe not the smoke bomb. No, but there's one that you drop like spikes on the ground. I can't remember what they call them. but they're just like spikes on the ground. That's essentially a trap, and normally it will slow down an enemy, but you can get ones that make them catch fire, or there's also one that you get that's just basically you're throwing dust at them, which normally just like temporarily blinds them. But of course you can get one that makes them catch fire. And then what else is there? There are some of the swords. Well, one of the swords I got actually has 2 stances attached to it. So it has by default 1 stance, but then part of the random roll is that you get an additional stance. So you actually get 2 stances, which is super helpful instead of just being stuck with 1. And that makes a big difference. I think that's really about all I have to say about that. But yeah, it's good stuff. I enjoy it. But in the midst of everything else, I just kind of was getting this antsy feeling like I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, because there's only so much, with the grinding in something like Legends mode where I want to keep doing it over and over. And so I wasn't really in the mood to go back to New Game Plus at the moment. And so I kind of just dabbled in a couple of games, most of which I didn't actually get any footage recorded, but like I booted up the third Ace Attorney game in the trilogy on the 3DS, and played for like maybe 10 minutes, and I couldn't remember what I had done already, and I was trying to figure it out, and it just wasn't really working for me, so I gave up messing with that. But I decided to download and try out Maneater. Now, I didn't play very much of it. I basically just played through the tutorial mission, where you start as like a fully grown shark and get to attack people and stuff. You really just learn the basics, and then after you complete the tutorial mission, it takes you into the main game where you start off as a baby shark. And I've actually never heard that song, but anyway, so the and then you just start as a level 1 baby shark, and the and so you just you basically swim around, you kill stuff, and controls pretty well, runs well on PC. I didn't try it yet on Steam Deck, even though I did download it there. Mostly just because I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to play it that much. Like, it's fun, but I could definitely see how it would become very repetitive, and a lot of people have said that it becomes very repetitive over time, so I might dabble with it here and there, but it's probably, at least right now, it's not something where I'm like, okay, I want to play this at this moment. But if I'm ever looking for something that's that type of game, it could definitely be interesting, because it's just an RPG. I mean, a shark RPG. I thought originally it was Metroidvania, but it's not. It's just an RPG. So, but the main thing that I've been playing that's taken up the most of my time is Castlevania Circle of the Moon. So I ended up getting past my initial issue with the controls. One of the biggest problems I had was, of course I was struggling a bit figuring out the controls and feeling like it was smooth enough. And I was looking at Steam forums, where someone was explaining some of the stuff that you need to know, basics with controls. One of the things they said is that in order to do the sliding kick attack, you press down and the attack button. And so I'm like desperate. I'm trying to do this over and over, pressing the down and attack button, pressing down and forward. And it's like, sometimes I'm getting it, sometimes I'm not. And I'm like, the controls cannot possibly be this bad. It just, like, it was driving me crazy. And then I figured out it's not down and attack, it's down and jump. So you actually have to press down and A. Down and A on the Switch. And that's where I'm playing it. I'm playing it on the Switch because it performs the same on both. And it's like, well, I bought this physical copy. I originally always wanted to play it on Switch because it just feels more right to me to play this game that was originally a Nintendo game on a Nintendo platform. Plus, of course, I have the cartridge and all that. So anyway, I spent some time playing this, and I spent a good amount of time in it. I'm like, I want to say 70% of the way through the map. I think I have like 3 bosses left. Maybe 4 at the most. I know I have Death. I have oh god, what's the guy's name? He's the so you have Nathan and the guy that he's with at the beginning of the game, and you play as Nathan. And I can't remember the other guy's name for some reason. It's just escaping my brain. But anyway, I know you have to fight him. Spoiler, not that anyone really cares that much about the story for these. And then of course I'll have Dracula at the end. But I think the only upgrade I know for sure that I haven't gotten, besides whatever you get from fighting the rival guy, whatever his name is the item that lets you walk through the poison water safely without it damaging you. Because I already I went through most of that. I mean, I've struggled with it, and I finally realized, there probably is supposed to be some kind of item that's supposed to make it so I can walk through the water without taking damage all the time. But I haven't, gone and done that yet. I'm working on trying to get there, and that's what I was doing before we got on the call today. But I did at least, get the special boots from Camilla that let you jump really high, and those things are really nice, especially because of the fact that, like, initially I thought, okay, it's just one jump up and then you're good. It's like, no, there's like a very, very brief cooldown after you jump, and you can just jump, jump. It's really nice. So that's been kind of fun messing with that, but I need to go into the underground something or other where I fight Death. That's where I'm trying to get to right now. I'd been down there before, but I couldn't figure out how to get further in there, and I think I found what I need to do in order to do it. I haven't had a chance to get back there yet. So right now I'm still in the sewer area, and I'm trying to get back out of there so that I can go to the area I want to go to, so that I can get the thing to make it so I can get through the poison water without constantly taking damage. One of the things, though, that I have to say with this game is I have abused the rewind feature. Like, completely abused it. I have been ridiculous in how much I use it. Games like this, like when I played, for example, Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, Zero Mission the first time, I did, abuse save states quite a bit. And that was pretty much my intention. I was like, okay, if I'm really struggling, I'll just do save states. I mean, I'll try to see what I can do without them. But the main thing is, I figured, okay, it's reasonably doable, but man, this game is way harder than those other games. And it took way longer than it should have for me to figure out the way that you could heal without a save point. And so there would be times where I was really, really low on health, like down to like 5 HP. And so every time, I would get hit, I'd have to rewind so I didn't die, so I didn't have to keep going back to the last save point. And I would go through like huge sections with basically no health because I had to, and just kept rewinding to get the right jump, get a hit in, so on and so forth. And then I also found out, but I did find out about the healing thing, which is still really slow, but it's still better than nothing. And I did find out also about the DSS glitch, which is super nifty, particularly for fighting the dragon zombie. That just made the fight cheesy, ridiculously easy, and I am so glad I found out about that because I was struggling with that fight. It was pissing me off so much. So the thing that you can do to cheese that is, are you familiar with the DSS glitch for that game?
No, I was actually going to ask you to explain that to me. Okay,
so before, I guess I should ask first of all, you're familiar with the DSS system where it's like cards?
Yes.
Okay. So the way the glitch works is that if you don't have all the cards, what you can do is you choose a combo that actually does something, of the cards that you have. and then you activate it. But while he's in the middle of the animation, you go to the menu and then you select whatever cards for the combination you want, even if you don't have them, and then he will take on that particular combination. So it's a way that you can use certain combos like the poison shield or turning into a skeleton, for example, without having to actually have the cards. And so for taking out the dragon zombie, when you first get into that room and you drop down, if you jump back up, and then the glitch that you use is to make yourself into a skeleton. So then you can throw projectiles that, for one, they pass through like platforms and stuff, but also occasionally you'll throw giant bones that'll do a ton of damage. And so you jump up to one of the doorways, and then you transform into the skeleton, and then you just keep throwing the bones until it kills one of the dragons. Then you change back, jump over to the other side, change into the skeleton again, and then throw the bones until it kills the other dragon. And it's a super cheesy method, but you know what? I'm totally fine with it. I don't care. This game is hard, and this isn't Dark Souls. As far as I'm concerned, this is a feature of the game. They left it in, even though they could have patched it out for this remaster. And I was happy to abuse it. Now, I will probably not use the rewind feature in the other games. My friend was telling me that I think it's the second game. I think it's Aria of Sorrow, maybe. It's either Aria of Sorrow or Harmony of Dissonance. Which one did he say it was? One of them, he said it's like super easy compared to this one. But it's definitely something that let me see. Let me find what he said. Okay, so yeah, Harmony of Dissonance, he says, is ridiculously easy by comparison. And Aria of Sorrow, he says, is actually his favorite of all the Castlevania games. Or Egavania, rather. All the games that were made by the same guy. So yeah, I'm not planning on doing that. I'll probably still use save states occasionally, but probably not going to abuse the rewind feature so much, because I don't feel like that's always necessary. Well, typically I wouldn't even use that. Like I've never used that in previous games when I've had the option. But it's just this situation where it's like, okay, I don't really want to backtrack that far over and over because of the fact that I'm down to 5 health, and at the time I hadn't figured out the healing ability. So yeah, I think that's about it. I have like 8 hours, I think, in the game right now. So I don't know if in order to quote unquote 100% the game, you have to actually play through with all the other different character classes. So I know that like you unlock different ones after you beat each one. I probably would not. I mean, if I was going to do that, it would be like, okay, maybe down the line I'll go back and try doing it with like, you know, the different options instead of just the vampire killer. But at least for now, my intention is I'm going to complete it as a vampire killer and then move on to the next game, whether it's the next Castlevania or, you know, play something else and then come back to Castlevania later. So, but yeah, that is about it.
Okay. So if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I played Circle of the Moon, but if it's similar to the other Game Boy Advance Castlevania games, that I definitely do remember how they went. You don't need to go through each character's, or at least play through all the other characters to technically get the 100%. In order to get that, you actually need to obtain every type, because I can't remember. Because I think I'm trying to remember how it is, because I know that because you're actually playing as a Belmont, you don't necessarily have all the type of stuff like with you have the souls from Aria of Sorrow or Symphony of the Night, so you don't have to collect it. If you do have something like that, or actually, you should be able to get, I think, everything you need from the DSS cards. Like it might be requiring something like you have to get all of that. You might be some like you have to get all the cards for that. You might have to say complete the map entirely. But if it's similar to the other ones, and like maybe depending on like getting certain items, but like I don't even think that's a requirement, because I know that for at least Dawn of Sorrow, you didn't need to get every single item or every single weapon in the game, because you were fine if you're. I mean, I could be wrong though. You might actually have to get like every single item, and that might also require like, I can't remember if you could craft stuff or not, but you might have to like craft stuff in order to get that. So that would probably be a requirement, but you wouldn't necessarily have to play through the game entirely just to get 100% in that case. But I am definitely glad that you figured out what was going wrong initially, and we're able to make progress there. It's been a while since I've played, and I don't even remember if I even finished Circle of the Moon, but I definitely do agree that it does get easier after this one. Like, I honestly think that Aria is probably the easiest of the Game Boy ones, Game Boy Advance games, but I definitely know that Harmony of Dissonance was definitely easier than Circle of the Moon, so it definitely will get better from here on out. But I also agree that Aria was a very good game. I probably would say that I think Dawn of Sorrow, which was the DS sequel to Aria, that one probably is my favorite, but Aria still was very good, and Dawn just like built off of that. But yeah, definitely good there. Question regarding Ghost. So with the perks you mentioned, are those something that you just have that you obtain for the duration of a mission, or is that something that you can keep after the mission's over?
The perks are all tied to the gear specifically, so it's
okay.
not like Hades where it's just temporary boons. It's all okay. This piece of gear has this particular perk. When you're out of mission, you can re-roll the gear if you want to get different perks on it, and you can re-roll like specific. There's different aspects to the perks, and like you can just re-roll one at a time rather than having to do the entire thing. So if like you want to have one perk but you don't want to have the other one, that sort of thing. So
okay, yeah, I was just curious about that because I was wondering how that would work. But okay, yeah, that's pretty fair. Definitely can help with making a particular build for what you're doing. But yeah, sounds good.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like there's something else I was going to tell you about, but I don't remember what it is, and if I remember, I'll tell you later. But anyway, real quick, just I'm guessing that you didn't get a chance to check out the frame generation for Ghost on Steam Deck or anything.
No, I didn't unfortunately have a chance to do that. That's something that I do want to get to around this weekend, but I just have to see with certain things if that's going to actually happen or not.
Right. Yep. Completely understandable. All right. Any other thoughts before we get into the news?
No, sir.
All right. So we have some pretty significant changes coming to Game Pass. And this is both on the Xbox and the Windows side. So, of course, the biggest thing is price increase. So, let's see here. Let me just bring up the summary here from Windows Central. So, Xbox Game Pass for console will be shuttered for new users only. I'm not sure what that means exactly. That part is a little unclear. Okay, anyway, users currently on Xbox Game Pass for console will be allowed to maintain their subscription, as well as day one games and the hundreds of titles in the back catalog. Okay, so I think what it is that it's just like the base level of Game Pass. If you already have it, you'll be grandfathered in. You'll be able to keep using it. But if you don't have it, you won't be able to get that original level that includes the day one new games. So going forward here, new users on Game Pass in the near future will be greeted by new Xbox Game Pass Standard. This is more like EA Access, which includes Xbox's back catalog and does not include day one games. It will be priced at $14.99 per month and will also include Xbox Live Gold for multiplayer, now known as Game Pass Core, confusingly. It doesn't include Xbox Cloud Gaming. Game Pass Standard is supposed to be launching in September. From September 12th, 2024, Microsoft will only allow existing users to stack Xbox Game Pass for console for up to 13 months. So the existing version of the base level that has the free new games, you'll only be able to stack it for up to 13 months. Using prepaid cards and the like, which will continue to function in perpetuity. If you have more than 13 months stacked already, you will not be impacted. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate will not be changed, but it will get a price increase. It will still include PC Game Pass, day one games, and hundreds of back catalog titles, as well as cloud gaming, but it is getting a price increase. The new price will be $19.99 per month. I believe it's currently $18 or $17.99 per month. Right now, you can stack 3-month prepaid cards with 30. Never mind, we don't need to worry about that. I guess it's a money saving thing. You can stack 3-month prepaid cards with a 33% discount on the current pre-increased pricing at CD Keys. So anyone who's listening and happens to want to get a better deal, that's probably a better way to go over just getting the full year. PC Game Pass is also getting a price increase from $9.99 per month to $11.99 per month. PC Game Pass will also continue to get day one games. Xbox Game Pass Core, which is the Xbox Live Gold multiplayer, gets an annual price increase from $74.99 to $74.99 from $59.99, but it will remain $9.99 per month. So if you do per month, it's $9.99 per month. If you do it for a year, it's $74.99 for a year. Price increases are global, and for users who have recurring billing, have automatic billing set up, the new prices will take effect on September 12th, 2024, which gives you time to cancel if you don't want to keep that. Microsoft also has a support page related to all of these changes. So, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is definitely something that is pretty much inevitable with the type of service that it is. I mean, all software as a service things, they do eventually get price changes. We've seen this before constantly with Netflix. Netflix is notorious for doing this, and even sometimes within the same year, it will have multiple price increases. Amazon Prime has also done this as well, with increasing the price of Prime. Not as frequently as Netflix, but still has done that in the past. And even with PSN, that has had a price increase as well. So anyone who, and I'm pretty certain Game Pass had a price increase before, once at least, I think. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong, but I feel like they've already done that before. Yeah. So anyone who thought that Microsoft wasn't going to raise the price of Game Pass was just kidding themselves, because this is the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, is that like all sales software as a service products, they do get price increase. And granted, like even outside of that, with stuff like Adobe products, like those, I mean, they change from full licenses to just subscriptions, and the subscriptions have gone up as well. So it's like I said, it's inevitable for this to happen. Now, I feel like, in one sense, even though Microsoft has, stated what certain things are, it still feels kind of confusing, especially considering the fact that they're, blocking off Xbox Game Pass for consoles for new users, because it's like now they also have a new standard that's being rolled out. It's like somewhat confusing. It's like, all right, you have all these different, all these features, all these tiers, and I don't necessarily know like what's the best one to get. I don't know what I can get. I mean, sure they said this one is going to be blocked for new users, and this one's something that new users can use for a certain period of time, but they just made it more complicated than it needed to be, in my opinion there. But I think all in all, though, this is sort of like a reason why I don't care for Game Pass or just this type of service in general, just because I don't want to pay I don't want to pay a subscription just to play games that I know that if I stop paying the subscription, I lose access to those games. Like, I'd much rather just buy a game once, and sure, it might be more expensive than, paying a lower monthly subscription fee, but I know that at the end of the day, I don't have to worry about, oh, did I not pay my subscription and I lose access to the game? And I've said this before, that Game Pass is great for people to try out new games they might not necessarily try. Like, I have seen this before with a friend of mine, where he actually got into indie games because of Game Pass. Like, before that point, he he'd probably be hard pressed to, but like, I don't want to say the worst, because that sounds like indie games are bad, are low quality, but I guess I would say that he would only go so far as to play like double A games. But because of this Game Pass, it did allow him to play indie games and get into them, and so I'm grateful for what that can do. But at the same time, like, I don't necessarily care for it because of the fact that I don't own these games.
Right.
Like, I feel like even on console, I would much rather buy a game digitally, even though there is the concern that, after a period of time, once we're in a newer generation, I might not be able to download those games anymore. I at least would have the ability to have them on the physical console to play whenever. So that's how I feel about that. But I don't know. Like I said, this is something that's inevitable. But I think that because of the way that Microsoft is handling this, it just makes things confusing, and that's not a good thing at all.
Yeah, I mean, looking over it again, for me, it seems pretty straightforward. But obviously, it's just kind of one of those things where, yeah, it is a big change to how it works. I'm kind of mixed on my thoughts with this, because on the one hand, I can't stand fanboys on either side. Because you got the Xbox fanboys who are just defending it till they're blue in the face. You have PlayStation fanboys saying, "Oh, this is the death of Xbox," like they've been saying all along. And while neither one of them is necessarily incorrect, it's still just, I don't know. I'm so mixed on it. Like, I get why they're increasing the prices. I think that realistically, even if the economy was not in the state it's currently in, they would still increase the prices.
Oh yeah.
Just because it's the way things are, they have to charge more. If they're going to give you more value, they have to charge you more. I mean, that's just how it works. But yeah, it's one of those things where you really have to ask, is this really worth it? I mean, is it worth being subscribed to things? I mean, there comes a certain point when it ends up being like you're spending way more than you would to just buy some games. It's one of the reasons why, one of the several reasons that I got rid of Netflix and Disney Plus and things like that. instead of spending the monthly fee for however long, I just buy the things I want to watch. And if there's something I desperately want to watch, I might figure out a way to do a free trial once in a while. But for the most part, like, it's not something significant enough to make it worthwhile for me. Now, in the case of Game Pass, for me, I have such a huge game library already that Game Pass to me isn't all that valuable. I don't even have time to play the games I already own. I don't need a subscription service so that I can temporarily rent, a series of games, and some of those games are not even going to stay there in perpetuity. Some of those games will disappear over time. They'll be delisted. I'd rather just spend the money and buy the game and at least theoretically be able to keep it long term. And then, if I get to it, then I get to it, and hopefully I will eventually get to it. But I'm sure that from a realistic standpoint, there's a whole lot of games that I will probably never play, because that's just the nature of buying games all the time. So, but I still think that probably if I had subscribed to Game Pass on PC day one, I probably still would have spent more money being subscribed to Game Pass for years on end, price increase or not, than I have spent on just buying games over the years. And I've definitely spent more on buying games than I care to admit. I don't actually know how much I've spent, and I don't think I want to know how much I've spent, because, I've been pretty much buying games consistently since I was probably around 18, 19, no, probably more like around 20 when I started to have more of a consistent income. I think, yeah, somewhere around there is when it really started, especially after college. And I had technically more time and could work more hours and stuff. So anyway, I keep forgetting to mute my phone. Give me 1 sec. All right. But yeah, I guess I don't really have anything else to say about that. It is what it is. It's not unexpected, and it's just going to keep happening, and it makes me glad that I'm not subscribed. I'll just say that.
Yeah, that's definitely agree with that.
So, all right. You want to cover this Valve getting sued topic?
Sure thing. So, in the UK, Valve is facing a lawsuit, primarily just because it's an $800 million lawsuit, because I can't remember exactly who it is that's being lawsuit, but essentially it's brought over the fact that Valve is being anti-competitive, especially with pricing, especially with saying that what was the exact wording here? Is that that they're charging too much for developers for like the 30% fees, and just like primarily just like the lawsuit is just dealing with the pricing aspects of it, and like so far this hasn't really gone to court yet. It's just like the lawsuit. Like I don't think the trial has actually gone underway yet, but it's approaching that point right now. And I don't even know if we have a date for when it starts yet or not, but that is pretty much the gist of the situation right now. But you can go ahead and start things off here.
All right. Well, of course there's a whole lot of nonsense with this whole thing, but it's your typical boomers who don't actually know what they're talking about. We'll say these things. There's a developer who goes by well, actually no, it's actually a real the name of the developer is Pirate Software, which at first when I saw the name Pirate Software I thought, oh, they're advocating piracy, and it's like, no, that's the name of the company, is Pirate Software. but it's kind of funny here. So, uh, Pirate Software explains everything that's wrong with this. So I'll just go ahead and read off what specifically they say here on Twitter. So he says, or well, they say, this video and the claim it's referencing are absurd. Number one, Steam's pricing restriction is only for Steam key pricing off platform, meaning you cannot use Steam as a distribution hub and sell Steam keys off platform for cheaper. This prevents Valve from getting ripped off and is absolutely fine. They do not dictate the lowest price your game can be sold for unless you are using Steam keys. Number two, of course Valve doesn't let you buy DLC for Steam games from rival platforms. That would mean Steam would then have to distribute this DLC despite not making a sale. They have to pay for this bandwidth. For those who think you can do this through Humble Bundle or the like, you are buying a Steam key there. Don't make me get the stick. Number three, the Steam 30% cut is not actually 30%. It's 30% for all sales made on the Steam platform. If you sell Steam keys, Valve takes a 0% cut of that transaction. They also don't charge for generating Steam keys. The claim that 30% is egregious is also a subjective opinion, as many developers, myself included, find that the value brought by Steam is well worth it. So, kind of like summary of some of those things. Definitely like the 30% cut. That's one of the bigger things. So, it's only that 30% cut is only if they sell their game directly on Steam. If they sell their game directly on Steam, Valve gets that 30% cut. They're handling customer service related to that. They have to handle refunds, all that stuff. It's just basically less work on the developer side of things by having their stuff go through Steam, but Steam gets a cut because they're doing the extra work. And also because of the fact that they're listing it on Steam, it gets more eyes on it, theoretically. Depending on the game, considering how much shovelware there is and just garbage on Steam in general. But Valve doesn't... If you sell Steam keys separately, like, for example, Green Man Gaming or Fanatical, or even Instant Gaming, which of course is not official Steam keys, Valve does not take a cut of that transaction. So so realistically, it's kind of interesting to think about. Green Man Gaming, for example. Well, actually, maybe not. I'm trying to think of how to work, because... So I don't know how that works. Never mind. I'm just going to forget about that. But either way, Valve doesn't charge them to generate Steam keys, which is pretty nifty. So it's basically the idea behind it is that, yeah, they're not making any money. They're not making any money for the Steam keys being generated for their games. However, because of the fact that it gets people on the Steam platform, it also increases... it creates a potential customer, someone who's probably going to buy games. Because Steam has great sales all the time. People buy... Well, us PC gamers buy a ridiculous amount of games. Basically, the only ones who don't are, like, the ones who are really, really new to it. Like, when I first started, I think I bought, like, 2 games. I bought the Orange Box. That's the name of the podcast. And I bought Plants vs. Zombies. And then I bought Knights of the Old Republic. So those were like the only games I bought, and at least 2 of those I got on discount. Actually, I might not have gotten any of them on discount, but at the time I didn't know Steam sales were a thing, and this was 2010, so it's a long time ago. But anyway, point being, you get people on the platform, they're more likely to buy games there. And that's what Steam uses as their reasoning for not charging for the developers to make Steam keys. And then you have places like Green Man Gaming and Fanatical that are official resellers, that they're allowed to resell those keys. And, they give it for a discounted rate. And they don't have to pay Steam any percentage for those. Um, so anyway, I don't know exactly how like all of that works, but either way, it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. I think it's a lot of it is really just going to depend on who they have looking at the case. If they have a bunch of boomers in the jury, or however it works over in the UK, because I don't honestly know all of their legal system, then you may very well have this go in UK government's favor. But if you have even a fraction of people who are actually who are younger, who use Steam, that sort of thing, they're going to have a better idea theoretically of how all this works. And you would think that the attorneys for Valve would be able to basically just point out that this is not, that they have a complete misunderstanding of how this works. Anyway, that's about all I got to say.
Yeah. So initially I was actually a bit confused by the phrasing of that Pirate Software was mentioning about like restrictions for keys, and like publish or developers couldn't lower the prices on Steam, because I was wondering like, then how are Steam keys like always cheaper on Green Man Gaming than on Steam itself? And I realized that it's just like the MSRP price is the same, but like the discounts can be cheaper. So like that made sense to me. The one thing that really just irritates me is the focus on the 30%, because of the fact that, granted, I don't know if this is different over there in the UK, but at least over here in North America, US specifically, 30% is pretty much a standard across the board for nearly every software company. Microsoft does it, Sony does it, Nintendo, I'm pretty certain, does that. Apple does that. Mm-hmm. Google does that. Like the only one who doesn't do that is actually Epic. That's probably like the only other company that has games that like that takes a smaller cut. Mm-hmm. But other than that, everyone else is doing it for 30%. So like why is this one company why is this one company charging 30% a problem? And I'm not saying that, if a dev could get a better cut, I'm not saying they shouldn't get that, but I'm just saying that why is this a problem now? Like hasn't this been a problem like any other time in that aspect? But again, like I don't know if it's different over there, how other companies handle it over there. But another thing is the fact that I don't get what's so bad about even doing this in the first place. It's not like I don't know. I don't see how making certain that the price on another store is being the same as the price on Steam is a problem. It's not as if though Valve was going out there and just like buying exclusivity. It's not like they were doing that. So like what I don't see what's so anti-competitive about any of Valve's practices right now. Mm-hmm. And they're saying like because they have a monopoly. Well, they're providing the best service. I mean, no other platform on PC is giving the same type of support. Like you have the same type of mod community, like mod support. No one else on PC is doing that. No one is, going through has the type of special sales. I mean, sure, Epic gives away games on a very regular basis, but look how long it took for them just to have a basic shopping cart in the 21st century, in like the late 2010s, like when that's something that basic stores have been doing for quite sooner than that. And this is also a fact that it's not even like it's a small little startup company either. This is like a major AAA corporation. But then like all other types of like community stuff, Steam Workshop, like we talked about recently the Steam recording feature, all types of other community driven aspects, and like Valve and Proton. Like Valve has done so much more and provides more stuff for the community than any other place, which is why people love them so much. Like the only thing that I would say that Valve doesn't have is just DRM free support. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, granted they have their rule where if the company ever did go under, they would just release the games completely DRM free. But just like until that point happens, like they don't have that, and the only place you can actually get DRM free games is GOG. So like that's like the only thing that I would say they don't have that I wish they had. Yeah. But other than that, though, Valve is probably like 90% the best at what they do on PC. And like there's a reason why people go to it. So like if you want your company to compete, then you actually need to do something to compete. Like Epic Games, they want to throw shade at Valve constantly, but at the same time, what are they doing to actually incentivize people to use their platform? Considering the fact that they've had problems before with, people not being able to check out, people having problems with buying games, all types of stuff, how there's a lack of features. There's even a point, there was even actually one time where you actually couldn't have more than one game in a shopping cart, so you actually could only buy one game at a time. That was a problem as well. So they want people to go and use their platform, but they're not doing anything worthwhile. So I don't see how they can throw shade. And also, funny thing is also with Epic, and also going back to a point I mentioned, Epic goes out of their way and pay for exclusivity to force people to use their platform, and that's not seen as some sort of anti-competitive feature. Like, why are we turning a blind eye to an actual anti-competitive thing where games cannot release on Steam because of the fact that Valve went out and tossed some money at the developer and said, hey, don't put this game on Steam, just like keep it over here for a while, okay? And I mean, Square regretted that decision for a long time, and I'm glad they came to their senses, and not only just with Epic, but also on console as well, where they want to bring their games everywhere. But Square, like, that's like the biggest thing there. But then also the fact that I can still bring this up because this is probably one of the biggest things that I would say is anti-competitive, is the fact that Epic blacklisted an indie dev from selling their game on the Epic Game Store because they did not make it an Epic exclusive. It was for the game Dark. And I love bringing this up because, the Dark developer, he came out and said that he originally, when he was making the game, he promised PC gamers it would be on Steam. And so then Epic came and said, hey, you can put your game on our platform, but you have to make it exclusive. And he said, I can't do that because I made a promise that I would have it on Steam. And so because of that, he couldn't sell the game on Epic Game Store because of that. And so, again, why does Epic Games get a free pass when they're doing an actually anti-competitive things here? I just don't get that at all. But yeah, I really hope that this lawsuit doesn't even go anywhere. I hope this isn't even entertained, because it's completely ridiculous when you point out the fact that there's a reason why people are using Steam, because it actually does a whole lot more. And people can say, yeah, that Valve has been around a whole lot longer and has been in this business a lot longer. But I think that because they've done so much more and they've built up a good foundation, it should be pretty much it should be a piece of cake to look at what they're doing and then just replicate it. And again, especially with Epic, they're not some small company they're not like itch.io, where it's just like a bunch of like trying to get a bunch of indie devs, to help put out their games. No, they're a major company. They make a game engine that AAA companies, and of course, smaller companies as well, but a lot of developers use. Like, it's a major company, so they have no excuse as to not be able to meet a fraction of what Valve is doing. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, it's always one of those rules for thee but not for me kind of situations. And I mean, we've seen other like baffling decisions come out of the UK before. You know, the way that they like went after Microsoft with the whole acquisition of Activision, but when Sony was doing similar, or when Sony was doing its kind of things, they're just like turn a blind eye to it. Granted, I will give them credit that they did go after Sony for their anti-consumer practice of making it so that you couldn't buy their games digitally anywhere but the PlayStation Store. So, got to give them credit for that.
They need to go after Embracer.
Yeah, there's just a whole lot of different battles that could be brought up. But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see if anything comes of this. But yeah, it's just it's dumb. That's all there is to it. All right. Any other thoughts on that topic?
No, sir.
All right. So we recently found out that Bloodborne is kind of sorta on PC now. And I say kind of sorta because basically there's been a PlayStation 4 emulator in the works for some time, and there's a video up on Twitter where they managed to get through the startup screen, and then it glitches out pretty quickly shortly after that. So it's very, very, very early in terms of the emulation, but of course Sony has not brought the game over for whatever reasons, who knows. Of course, on the PS4, performance on that game is pretty terrible. But it's a beloved game that, like PC gamers would happily give Sony money for it if they would release it. But they haven't, and who knows if they will. So, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this definitely was something that was inevitable. I mean, look at, Demon Souls. Granted, that's still probably coming. That's in the NVIDIA leak, which every other game so far has come to PC. But even before then, PC gamers were trying to get the PS3 version to run. And I mean, there's still work to be done, but for the most part, they've gotten to at least run, and you can, with some work, get it to play completely from start to finish. But, because of that, they definitely were going to go ahead and try to do Bloodborne. And that, sadly, isn't a game that was on the leak, which is partially why we also thought it was real, because it wasn't mentioned. But because of that, they definitely have more of an incentive to want to bring it over, because Sony's not doing it. And the fact that Sony hasn't even gone ahead and given a 60 FPS patch for the PS5 shows like how little, at least it seems, they think about this. And Hidetaka Miyazaki, he would love to put the game out. He would love to put the game on PC. He would love to do a lot of work on it. He can't say it because he knows he's going to get in trouble for it, but he would love to do that. And I mean, he's even mentioned that like other devs within FromSoft have mentioned that as well. But it's just really, it's just mind-boggling as to why Sony hasn't done it already. But I'm not surprised that PC fans are doing it already. Now, one thing I'm partially wondering is, even though this is a more complex system than the PS3, would it probably take as long to emulate as Demon Souls? Partially because of the fact that the PS3 was, as a whole, just complicated to emulate because of its architecture. Mm-hmm. Could this take less time to develop because of the fact that it is a more simplified architecture than the PS3? Granted, like I said, it's running on a more powerful hardware, so that probably will extend the time it could take, but could we get it a whole lot sooner? Granted, also, the PS Bloodborne, like, when did that even come out again? Like
2015. Yeah.
Okay, so almost 10 years ago. So I mean, so yeah, I guess they've had some time to do some work on it. I mean, I know that the PS4 emulator has been in development for a while, but I don't know. Maybe I'll say 3 or 4 years. It probably could be ready, but yeah. I mean, I'm happy this is happening. I'm even if it is, you know, just a very very small baby step. It still is us getting one step closer to playing it on PC, one way or another. So I'm happy for that, and you know, I look forward to them doing more improvements. But you know, if Sony wants to go ahead and just, you know, port it over, or you know, give Blue Point the reins and do a full remake,
Yep.
I'm happy with that too. So the ball's in your court, Sony. You just need to make a move.
Yep. It's like that video that I shared with you, and I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, but you know, right now, of course, you have PlayStation, you know, fanboys in particular who just don't like the idea of the game coming over, you know, bragging about the fact that right now we can't run it on PC because it's very early in the coding process of getting figured out how to get it properly emulated. And you know, saying, oh, you should just buy you could just buy a $100 PS4 and then play it that way. But I mean, for starters, of course, you know, if people wanted to buy a PS4, they would have bought one before. Secondly, Sony doesn't make any money off of that transaction, you know, because it's not new. So Sony makes absolutely no money that way, where, you know, doing the emulation route, they're also not making any money. But if Sony would just release the game on PC, they'd make a ton of money. As will be demonstrated with the next story that we'll be getting to. But do you have any other further thoughts on that?
No sir. But of course, you know, pony's gonna pony.
Yeah. I do want to just mention one thing briefly related to that. Basically, in short, is that I hope Sony realizes that it will be very profitable for them if they put the game on PC, because it's probably the most requested PlayStation game, period, for PC, because, you know, Souls-like games sell incredibly well on PC, sell way better there than any other platform. So, but anyway, going into our next story here, we got the NPD sales for the month of May, and the top selling game was Ghost of Tsushima on PC. I thought PC gamers didn't buy games, but apparently that's not true. So, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this definitely speaks a whole lot of volumes, considering the fact that all these other games on here, like even the fact that Paper Mario, like it beat out Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. That definitely says a lot. But I mean, like looking at all the games on this list here, I mean, some of them, you know, are older games. Some of them actually are surprised to see like doing so well. But as a whole, though, like Ghost of Tsushima to rank #1 spots, that's incredible. And this is also a game that also was previously released on PlayStation, on console. So it's not, you can't say that it's a new game because the fact that it's been out for a while. So the fact that people, even though the game came out for a while, people were still interested in enough to get the game, and they were ready to buy the game as soon as Sony did it. And so this shows, like you said, PC gamers are willing to pay to buy the game. You just have to give it to them. It's definitely incredible that ranked #1 spots, and considering like all the competition it could be facing here. Yeah, this is like very good. I mean, like I mean, just like one thing that I saw that was quite interesting was the fact that Helldivers 2 is still going strong. Like that, that's very good there in that aspect there. Which also, again, you know, that those are also PC sales as well. It's not just PlayStation. So Sony, the money's there. You just need to go out and go ahead and sow so you can reap.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. You look at the how it's listed on the sales chart. The last month, Ghost of Tsushima, well, that is in April, was ranked 71, and it went all the way up to rank 1 because of the fact that it came out on PC. And it's possible there were some people that bought it on PlayStation, but we know that realistically, it's the majority of the purchases were on PC. And I mean, it's well deserved. It's an amazing game. I love the game. I mean, there's a reason why I've gotten the platinum twice on it, and why I'm still playing, because I'm working on the primarily on the Legends mode, but you know, also slowly working my way through New Game Plus when I'm actually playing it. So, but yeah, it's just the thing is that I think that one of two things is going to happen with this, and I'm more cynical, so I believe it's going to be the less positive of the two things. But the way Sony's going to look at this, they're either going to look at it as, wow, this game sold really well, maybe we should start selling our games day and date. Or the much more likely scenario to be like, wow, we sold this 4-year-old game, and it sold really, really well. We should keep doing this. Keep releasing it on a delayed release, and it'll still sell well. I think that's probably what the message that they're going to get out of this. Even though it should be pretty obvious, especially with how well Helldivers has done, and the fact that it is easily outselling the PS5 version on PC. I mean, it's been outselling since the beginning. It's still outselling on PC versus console. But that being said, I don't know. I want this to happen more. And yes, of course, obviously we're not in a position where we need these games. But, I mean, it would just be smart for them to sell them day and date. Because they will sell a lot more copies. There's a lot more PC gamers than there are PlayStation gamers. And that on top of the fact that you also have a bunch of people who will double dip. You know, whether they're double dipping because they played the game previously, or because of the fact that they want to buy it for both platforms, perhaps. You know, and that's going to be more the minority if it's day and date. You know, people buying it on both platforms, but it will happen. There will be some people who will buy it on both. I mean, it's just like, you know, I did for Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. I bought it on Steam and on Switch because I love the game and because I wanted to support it, and of course there was the comparison as well. But yeah, I guess that's really all I have to say about that.
One more thing I want to mention is the fact that we aren't even getting all of the PC sales technically here anyway, because it's only just talking about digital sales that are on Steam. So like sales that were on the Epic Game Store are not being counted. And I'm also assuming that games from like say that were sold on Green Man Gaming,
right,
Fanatical, like those, even though those are official distributors of Steam keys, those also probably would be counted as well. So there are still more sales than, you know, are actually listed here as well.
Yeah, that is very true. Good point. So yeah, we'll see how things go moving forward. Once again, regardless of whether they take the right message out of this or they just take the message we expect, you know, we're still just fine. I mean, we have more than enough games to play. There's never a point when I am like, oh, I have no idea what I should play because I don't have any games that I want to play. It's more like, I have so many games that I want to play. I have to decide which game I'm going to play next, or which game I'm going to start playing, and then see how long I stick with it before I get sidetracked with something else, all that. But yeah, good stuff. All right, so we do have one final story for tonight, and that is this rumor that doesn't seem to be willing to die about GameCube games coming to Nintendo Switch Online. Now, in this case, it's actually based off of some listings within the Nintendo pages, various codings that they have for different products that they sell. And to try to give like a TLDL for this, or TLDR, basically there's different like codes for different controllers that they've done, and the controllers that they've done previously for the Nintendo Switch Online have certain codes, and there's a new code that's popped up, which the type of coding that it has is LDOL. The theory here is that this could be as in dolphin, because the GameCube's original codename was Dolphin. And considering the fact that the other versions of the GameCube controller that have come out from Nintendo for the Wii U and then the Switch had other codes, that this is not that. They're not the same codes at all. The theory is that, like what they've done with the NES, the Super NES, the Genesis, the N64, they're going to put out an official Nintendo Switch Online version of the GameCube controller that'll only be sold through their store, and that this could be them bringing GameCube games to the Nintendo Switch Online service. Now, of course, once again, this is, to some degree, this is what's the word I'm looking for? This is all speculative, and there's no confirmation whatsoever. There's nothing really to indicate that it's necessarily going to happen. It may not even be this generation. For all we know, if this is happening, it could very well be with the next generation Switch. But it still is an interesting thought. And something lastly I just want to point out with this is that people have questioned why it is that we have Luigi's Mansion 2 HD on the Switch, which is, of course, just an up-res port of the 3DS game. But we don't have Luigi's Mansion 1, because Luigi's Mansion 3 was made for the Switch. Fantastic game, beautiful looking game, one of the best looking games on the Switch, hands down. And then you have Luigi's Mansion 2 HD that just came out, and but you don't have the first Luigi's Mansion. And they could, of course, potentially port either do a remake or a port of the GameCube version or of the 3DS version, which I think is more likely if they were going to port it. But the fact that they've only done 2 and not 1 lends to the possibility that they could be releasing the GameCube version for Nintendo Switch Online. So, anyway, your thoughts?
Yeah, even without this particular rumor, I think we were going to get that anyway, get the GameCube Switch Online, considering the fact that Nintendo has progressively just done more, added more titles and stuff, especially with the N64 being brought in, and how they've handled other stuff as well from older systems. Especially seeing this code here, especially with references to Dolphin, I do think it's very likely that's going to happen. I do believe that they are going to also bring out a controller as well, for online and also just being purchased only through the store. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be something that's being bumped to the Switch successor. I think that it's going to be something that you can buy for the current Switch models, and frankly, I think possibly there might even be an overlap where the same Nintendo Switch Online is used on both the current generation and also the next generation as well, because I think that logistically it probably even makes more sense as to rather than having two separate services that are for two different systems, just have one that you use on both. So like I think that makes sense, and so they'll just have that overlap there. That being said, when would we actually see this? Maybe I would probably say fall. That's probably when we would see something officially, when something would probably be announced, something like that. And as you to your point, I do agree that, you know, the reason why they, you know, didn't release a Luigi's Mansion HD remake, because of the fact that they did Thousand Year Door, and the fact that they also did Metroid Prime, you know, gives credit to the possibility that it's because of the fact that it's going to be there on the NSO. Now, that being said, I still believe that I would much rather be able to purchase these games through like an eShop rather than just only be able to play them through Nintendo Switch Online. And I mean, granted, in an ideal world, being able to transfer any, granted, well, maybe I was wrong. Did they have GameCube games on the Wii U shop? Okay, so scratch that then. So not for GameCube, but for everything else, in an ideal world, I would love to have my 3DS and Wii U eShop purchases transferred over to my Nintendo Switch, but we don't live in that world, so I would much rather be able to just like purchase these games outright through another eShop, because that way I can just like play these games. I have these games and not just like part of a subscription service.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I feel like this is probably the most convinced I've been of this being a real thing. Because it always seemed like it was an inevitable thing, like it was going to happen eventually, but obviously they had to implement it slowly. You know, they wanted to do the previous systems first, and I mean, it seems like this is something that should happen, and the type of information that they found, you know, within Nintendo's own, whatever it is within their sites, definitely, you know, lends credence to the idea that this is actually happening. It's definitely going to be interesting to see, though, when this would come up. I think fall is a good theory. I'm just trying to figure out, would this just be like its own separate announcement? Would they do some type of direct? Because it seemed like they basically did their last direct for the Switch, but at the same time, they could do a smaller direct, like a mini, that just covers some basic things like Nintendo Switch Online, Metroid Prime 2 and 3, you know, remasters, whatever. You know, like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, that kind of thing, theoretically. But I don't know. It's definitely an interesting thought from that standpoint. And I'll definitely have to look and see what comes up. But I don't know. I will say I'm not sure. I mean, if there was not a way to buy Luigi's Mansion 1 on the Switch, like as an actual remaster or whatever, I probably wouldn't even bother with it, because I really like the 3DS version. I mean, I loved the GameCube version, of course, but it's like I have 1 and 2 on 3DS, and I have 3 on Switch, and I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, for a preservation standpoint, of course, I would love to have those, but it's hard for me to want to buy like 2 for Switch, especially because right now it's, you know, $60 for a game that I've had for a long time on the 3DS. But also because of the fact that it's like it feels like it's incomplete because you're missing the first game. So, anyway. That's all I got.
One thing that actually just popped to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they would introduce the GameCube as part of a new tier, because they did that with N64. They introduced it as a new paid tier.
I hope not, but knowing Nintendo, probably. I don't know what they would call it, but yeah, I could see them definitely introducing it as a new tier. Either that, or at least if they weren't going to introduce it as a new tier, they would just up the price of the existing, well, probably both tiers. Maybe like what they would end up doing is take the basic one and then add like the Genesis games and Game Boy Advance, for example, and then the new tier would add the GameCube to it. But I don't know. Don't know. But that's all I got.
Same.
All right. Well, if you have no other thoughts, let's get into our recommendations and dissuasions.
All right. So actually make sure I get this right here. I keep forgetting to do this. Let me make sure I have this right. Okay, so my recommendation is going to be to play a comfort game. Play a game that has a lot of sentimental value to you. It's not something that is necessarily a great game. It could be a game that you think is actually just pretty terrible. But if there's a game that you really enjoy because of the memories it brings you, then I say go ahead and play that just to enjoy the experience. Because what the game means to you is going to vary from person to person. Like, for example, a friend of mine, Final Fantasy X means a whole lot to him because that is one of the games that his late father gave him as a kid, and that's a game that he played a whole lot, and he eventually sold it at some point, but years later he got the game again, and he was just very happy to have this game, and he got it new actually, so he really cherished having that game again. So if there's a game that just like has a lot of value, that has a lot of personal value to you, just go back and play it every now and then, because it's good to go back and enjoy the reasons as to why you like that game in the first place.
Very good. Well, my recommendation is going to be the Castlevania Advance Collection. So, it is... obviously all I've played so far is Circle of the Moon, but from what I've heard, it only gets better from there, other than Dracula X, which I've heard is terrible. But I decided I'm going to accept the challenge and play it anyway. Because at least there's a rewind feature if I need it. So, but yeah, it's I'm enjoying Circle of the Moon, and I always think it's good to try out old games, stuff that you missed out on, because a lot of times, like, if you can get past the initial clunkiness of the controls and get used to it, it can be a lot of fun checking out these older games. So that is my recommendation. As a side semi-recommendation, I'm also going to recommend the Twilight Zone, the original series. I watched some of it when I was in 6th grade, because every week my teacher would play an episode of that for us in class, and then we would have like a worksheet answering questions about it, teaching various moral lessons and whatnot regarding it. So that was my introduction to it. This was 98, 99, right around there. And then I got the collection on DVD probably 2005, 2006, somewhere around there. And I watched all the way up through partway into season 4, which is season 4. They have like longer episodes, but I never got past that. So recently, because of the fact that my wife and I had finished up, the terminal list, we decided we'd start just going through the Twilight Zone. So we started from the very beginning, and we're just going through it little by little, and that's going to be our thing we watched for a while. And of course, since these ones I feel like you have to pay more attention to, it's our Friday night thing. Because like we'll put on other shows during the week and just have it as background while we're doing something else. But we always Friday is like it's either a movie or a TV show that we're actually paying close attention to, and not just having it as background noise. So yeah, that is what I have.
Do you have a favorite episode?
I don't know. It's hard to classify that because honestly, like I only remember a handful of the episodes. I mean, like I said, I've seen all the way through the first 3 seasons, part of season 4, and that's all I've seen. And I believe there's 6 seasons. No, 5 seasons. 5 seasons. So yeah, it's hard for. I mean, there's a bunch of them that are like really iconic. Of course, there's the one with the guy who just wants to read and and everything that goes with that. There's To Serve Man. That's a really iconic one. It's a cookbook. Yeah, a bunch of different random ones. Like just so many I can think of, but I don't know if I really have a favorite. I'll let you know when I finish the series. So the only problem though with getting the DVDs is that although I love the way the set looks, they're kind of some of the glue is like falling apart so that it's not. I mean, some of the plastic in there is not holding the plastic that's attached to the cardboard is not staying in place. So at least with the first season, there's some of it that's kind of loose. And so I'm going to have to try to see if I can figure out a way to get that reattached properly so that it's not just all falling apart as I'm going through it. Because, I mean, it occurred to me I've had this for close to 20 years now on DVD. Wow. So, anyway. Yeah, I think that's it. So, dissuasions.
All right. So I thought I had 2 dissuasions. I can only remember one right now, so I'm just going to say this one. So that is if you are using any sort of program or playing any sort of game outside of Steam that requires a controller, close Steam first because you will have problems with that. I realized that over this past weekend. My niece, she actually wanted to play Toy Story 2, and so I pulled up Project 64, and the controller wasn't working right, and I was wondering why. Especially if I press pause, it just kept enlarging the window instead of just pausing. And after a while, I realized, oh, I have Steam up, and the Steam inputs are conflicting with Project 64. So I realized I actually had to close that in order to get that to work. So don't forget to close out Steam if you're playing any type of game outside of Steam.
Good to know. All right, well, my dissuasion, I don't actually have anything written down, but I'm going to say my dissuasion is don't be afraid, don't be ashamed to use save states or rewind feature when you're playing a difficult old game, and or glitches that improve the game that help you out a bit. Yes, you could consider it to be cheating, but at least in terms of the rewind feature and the save states, I just consider them to be time savers because I'm not having to go back and redo a bunch of stuff. I just either rewind a little bit so that I can fix the mistake I just made rather than having to go back and then redo all that, or I'm loading up a save state for the same reason. So, and then the glitches, it's just sometimes it's helpful. I wouldn't use anything that would make me invincible necessarily, or anything that just completely destroys the difficulty of the game. But, something like just taking advantage of that DSS glitch and being able to turn into a skeleton and take out those zombie dragons with ease was fantastic. It was so satisfying. Yes, it would have been satisfying to beat them legitimately, but I just didn't have the patience. So it's like, hey, I found a cheese method that didn't require anything complicated. It was very simple to achieve, and it was worth doing. It was fun, and I was glad I did it. And maybe eventually I'll go back and I will do it completely legitimate, but not this day.
It is not this day.
Yes. There will be a day when the strength of men fail, but it is not this day. Yeah, anyway. All right. I think that's everything. So, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel, I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. I put out one video this past week, and that was pretty much just sharing my 4th of July tradition, which was, as I mentioned before, playing Toy Story 2. I pretty much just went through only the first level, but also just shared, the reason why I played the game and why I enjoyed so much and what it meant to me. And then, just pretty much, said, share your own personal 4th of July traditions as well. So that's what I've been up to.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but it hasn't shown up in my feed either, so I just need to look it up. I will do that, though, for sure. As for me, you can find me on YouTube at the Frozen Gamer 87, which is my primary gaming channel. I just put out another comparison this last week for Steam Deck and Switch OLED with Sifu. And that was a very interesting comparison. Definitely something where, obviously the Switch version performs much worse than the Steam Deck. Still looks pretty good, all things considered. It's worse when you do docked for sure, but it doesn't look bad on the Switch screen. And it still controls well, just, you got a lower frame rate and more stuttering from time to time, so there's that trickiness, but really most of the problem is just I'm terrible at the game. I haven't played it enough to get anywhere near what I would consider to be good at the game. But yeah, there's that. And then there's also my cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's at NABD Cooking. This last week I put out my recipe for chili rellenos, and I will be putting up next week a recipe for a chili relleno burrito, which is very, very, very good. Like, oh man, it was so good. I do want to back up real quick and just say with my Frozen Gamer channel, the next comparison that's planned to go up on Monday will be Diablo 3, which is definitely going to be more interesting comparison, mostly because of the fact that the Steam version does not have button controls and the Switch version does. And so the controls for the Steam version are a little, well, it's not actually the Steam version, it's the Battle.net version, but on the Steam Deck, the controls are a little more awkward. It still controls fine, but if you prefer button controls, or if you're used to button controls, it's much, much easier to control on the Switch than it is on the Steam Deck. So definitely an interesting comparison. I imagine that probably just like with Diablo 2, it's not going to get a whole lot of views, but the idea with these is that they're intended to be more evergreen kind of things that even if they don't necessarily pick up a lot of steam initially, over time they'll get views because it's just an interesting thing to look at. So but yeah, and whenever I get time, I don't know when it's going to be, I'm gonna finish recording stuff for the Ni no Kuni comparison, but I have not gotten to it at all, and it's been a really busy time. And of course, the fact that July, I'm doing the music at my church on top of the normal stuff that I have, has just made it more difficult to fit in stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. I will do my best to fit that in, though. But anyway, and then of course you can find, if you were listening to the audio only version of this podcast, you can also find our video version on YouTube at the Orange Box Podcast. The video version, which typically has both our mugs to look at, as well as gameplay clips that we recorded of the various games we've been playing, just to go along with stuff, as if you're interested in seeing some of these games that you may either have never heard of, or you just may not have seen the particular thing we're talking about. Those are in the video version. That comes out same day as the audio only version. So the audio only version is on all major podcast platforms, comes out at midnight on every Friday morning, and then the video version comes out at 7 a.m. Central Time every Friday morning. So there is that. You can also find us on Twitter at the Orange Box Pod. I don't post on there a whole lot other than reposting the podcast itself. Mostly just because I'm not that much into social media in general, but you can still check it out if you want to, and that's also a place you can contact us. So contacting us if you have questions, comments, you want to tell us how much you hate our guts, whatever it is that you happen to have to say, you can of course contact us through Twitter. I still get notifications if there's direct messages or anything like that, or if you tweet us. You can also contact us through Facebook, which it's not like a specific address, but you can just look up the Orange Box Podcast and you'll find us. Similarly, you can also send us an email, theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, those are all the different ways to contact us. I think that's everything. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention. Of course, the other thing that I put out this past Friday was Dads in Gaming, the 8th one. The first one in several years that I put up, which was an interview with a guy named Lem, also known as Bad Gamer Elite. It was a fantastic interview. I had a really good time talking with him. He's just a really interesting guy, and he looks a lot younger than he is. I will say that. But yeah, really cool interview. And next week on the 19th will be my interview with Timothy Hall, who is one of the founders of Married to the Games, who was there up through, I think, just shy of episode 200 before he decided to leave to focus on his growing family at the time. So it was really a pleasure to talk to him, because I've wanted to talk to him for years, and after he left the podcast, he kind of just vanished off the face of the earth for a long time, and it wasn't really until after Gabe died that he showed up again, and he went to the funeral and met up with people there, and then he joined the Discord, and I finally got a chance to talk to him, and it was just a really good conversation. So that'll be another interesting one to check out, and that is planned to go up on July 19th. So there is that. But yeah, that should be everything. So any final thoughts? Last chance.
Actually, one thing I did actually remember my other dissuasion, and that is this: if you use your Steam Deck docked, do not mess with the audio on via the Steam Deck stuff. If you're using, say, like, if you're trying to record something through another computer, or if you're trying to if you're playing it on like a TV, use the actual volume in that monitor or through whatever external device you're using, rather than through Steam, because at least for me, whenever I unplug my Steam Deck, the volume glitches to the point where I could turn something up all the way, but it's not actually, the volume's not actually going up all the way. So it's pretty much if it was at 100% turned up, it's actually coming out as, say, 40%, if that makes sense. And it's only until I plug it back into the dock mode and then mess around with the settings again, can I actually try to fix it, so that way it's actually working as it should be. And also that's also accounting the fact that I did also try restarting my Steam Deck as well to try to fix that. So don't mess with the audio settings on the actual deck itself.
All right, good to know. Well, then I guess we'll finish out for the night. So, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast, and until next time, insert clever outro here. Orange Box Podcast out.